Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Craig Peters here from Soundiron, and on today's Soundiron Session, we're going to be breaking down a track in the style of high school marching band drum corps sort of thing. This is going to be using our high school drum corps, Symphony Series Brass, and Symphony Series Woodwinds. So this was a fun track to write. It's definitely something I don't normally write in the style of, but it was a fun thing to experiment with. So let's go ahead and check out the track, and then I'll show you guys how I wrote it. Okay, so that's the track. I called it Back to School, aptly named because I was going for that high school marching band sound. First thing that I wanted to do was try to include as many of the different instruments that you tend to hear in something like this. So that's why you got some horns, trumpets, trombones, tubas. We also got a little bit of woodwinds. We got some flutes, some clarinets, some oboes, and some bassoons. Mainly just trying to include a lot of the different wind instrument families, and also the main thing is it's all sort of written around the high school drum corps. All right, so first thing, I think it would be good to just look at the overall percussion because everything was written around it. And the only instrument that's not in high school drum corps that I'm using in this demo is the Ape Elements. I'm just using the cymbals patch. I just needed some cymbals just for certain accents on different parts. But everything else is going to be high school drum corps. And this is just such a fun library to use. I mean, if you're doing any sort of marching band drumline stuff, I mean, this is definitely a good one to have. So you have all these different ones. I have an all band room. There's all field, ensemble field, marching ambiances. This is how I started the track off, actually. I was like, okay, if I was at a high school game, I would probably hear the sound of people in the crowd, maybe some other marching bands playing to the side. So this is pretty much that. So let's just go ahead and listen to just the ambiances. So it's definitely fitting to the style, and also it sort of makes you feel like you're there. When it comes to the mixing and the overall sort of mixing production style of this, it is a little bit more modernized in a way that maybe doesn't necessarily sound like you're at a high school, like as far as the way it's mic'd, because of course all of these instruments are closely mic'd and EQ'd and made to sound good for when you're composing. You don't have to do so much. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff I could have probably did in post to maybe filter it out and make it sound like it was a little bit more like a lo-fi recording, but that was more of a mixing stylistic choice. Moving forward, then we have the all band room. And some of the things I was trying to do with this as well is do different types of panning, because sort of trying to have the stereo image of maybe certain drummers here, and that sort of thing, just to kind of widen it out a little bit. So this is how the all band room sounds. And that's pretty much how it starts off. That's the first drums that you hear. And then down here you have some snare band room. I'll show you how that sounds by itself. So being that this is a marching band drum line, I wanted to have different aspects of different snares, like different players sort of playing some different rhythms and different snare rudiment stuff off of each other. So, and I think with this one I actually, yeah, I panned it a little bit to the right, just to sort of, like I said, so you have like sort of like your center drum line, and then you have maybe some snare players over here, maybe some other snare and other quad ensembles over here, that kind of thing. And then we have another snare field over here, I think. Let's see, did I pan this one? No, this one's actually centered. So let's listen to how all this sounds. So actually, just the snare field, let's listen to that. So you can see how that has its own sort of snare groove going on, and then we have this other one. So you see it's kind of playing off of each other, and I think that stuff, it makes it sound like it's a little bit more of like a realistic drum line. And then after that, we start to introduce some brass. And like I said, I'm using the Symphony Series Brass that we did with Native Instruments. And one of the things as I was writing this, I thought that it'd be really fun to add in some of the different effects patches that come with Symphony Series. Like there's these trumpet effects, and they sound really fun. It has like that big band jazz kind of thing, and it seemed to fit really well with this. So let's hear how that sounds. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Anytime I can try to throw in some of that big band stuff in a track, I will. And then actually down here we have some other sort of brass effects. We have that, we have the tuba effects, and we have some trombone effects. Let's hear how all those sound together. And then let's hear how all of this sounds and how it works with the percussion. So as the different brass effects end, then it starts to really introduce the more melodic aspects of the brass writing. But also, as I have the effects going, the brass effects, I also have this tuba down here, just playing some staccatos. And then down here we start to introduce some woodwinds, and I'm just using flutes, clarinets, oboes, and bassoons. So with the bassoons, they're pretty much doing what the tubas are doing, just more of blending them together for sort of a sonic color, and then just more of a low end supporting role, nothing really too much. I'm letting more of the more like higher timbred instruments of the woodwind families sort of doing their own thing. So right here we start to introduce a little bit of some woodwinds. See, let's see how that sounds by itself. So here it's just like a little flute run, and it's actually layered with the clarinets. And like I said, I'm using the Symphony Series Woodwinds ensemble for this. Then you got the bassoons playing that. Little woodwind flourish right there. So this part of the song around the middle is where I really wanted to start adding in like an element of like a drumline battle kind of thing. And this is where I started making creative decisions as far as how I want things to be panned, because when you're sort of trying to do like these drumline, snare rudiment battles, I didn't want them all to sound in the same place. I wanted it to sound like when this part comes in, it's this section. When this part, like when they're saying, all right, you go, now they're doing their own thing. So that's when I started doing that and making those sort of mixing and panning choices. So let's listen to just the drum corps library right here. that's pretty much the whole sort of drumline battle section. And then I'm also, at this part, I'm taking the melody from the horns and then I'm putting it to the woodwinds, but the woodwinds are harmonizing it now, so that's sort of the difference of that. You know, it's kind of a fun little melody. It's all based around C Lydian, so it has that kind of fun, optimistic, kind of uplifting feeling. But so you can hear how the melody is here with the horns. So there's the horns, and then this is the same melody with the woodwinds. And the brass is still playing too. The trumpets are just playing these little sort of rhythmic things in between. So even though the woodwinds carry the melody a little bit more on this, or the main melody focus is being sent to the woodwinds, the brass is still playing. So you can see there's these little trumpet staccatos that are playing. And then there's also some trombones. And then you also have these tubas as well. And then all together. And then the horns come in. Just to kind of pick up the momentum a little bit and then lead into the very end. And then for the end of the track, I just wanted to have some kind of finale ending. Like it sounds like it's coming to an end. So I'm just playing 3 chords. I'm just playing C, D, and then E. C major, D major, E major. Simple yet effective. And then I'm also doubling that with some of the woodwinds as well. And then you can hear for the percussion, I just wanted it, you know, to have like accent for each one. And then these drum rolls. And then there's also this little woodwind flourish down here at the bottom. You can hear this. So just to kind of, I don't know, those little things are always fun when you're doing more like optimistic sort of orchestral writing. Just those little kind of woodwind flourishes or string runs, like that kind of stuff, leading into a downbeat or something is always fun and sounds cool. And oh yeah, also up here, one of the things I wanted to do was I have these 3 different drum rolls going on, and I also programmed them to be slightly different, so they're not all playing exactly the same. So if you listen to just the drums right here, so you have this one, and I believe this one. So you can see they're all kind of different. So this one's a little bit ahead of the grid, this one is on the grid, this one's a little bit behind. So I wanted it to sound a little bit more off and just a little bit more like there's more drums really going on than there is. And then it ends. And then all together, let's listen to that ending. Little cymbal accents, and these cymbals, I'm using them very sparingly. It's just, like I said, just to accent some of the down. At the very beginning. and there wherever I felt it was necessary. And then one of the cool things about high school drum corps is that, you know, you can have these where all the different drums are laid out. So you have some rolls, some stick clicks, those are nice for accents. So that's always cool, and I like that sort of thing for when really trying to lay out a sketch or a foundation. Let's say maybe you just want to do it on one track, just to get the idea rolling, you can do it that way. And then from there, divide it up. And another thing that's really great is the fact that you have these different recordings from either a field or from a hall, so you have a little bit more of a choice as far as the different sounds that you want. So like this one is from a field, and then you have the different ones. This is from a band room. So let's just hear how these sound together. So, and you're not really going to tell too much of a difference, because even though they might be in different locations, what I ended up doing is I actually ran them through a reverb, and I ran all the instruments through this reverb. This is the Seventh Heaven Professional, and this is a really great reverb, and there's I have it going through a hall. This is the concert hall. Let's hear how just the drums sound without this. And the way I'm routing these instruments is I have them sent through an effects track, and then I'm just using them as sends. So I have the drums, the brass, and the woodwinds all in their own group, and then from there I'm just sending it to the effects track. The mix is all the way at 100, and then I'm just sort of increasing the send however much I feel is necessary. For the mixing, I use this this Gullfoss plugin. This is a really handy plugin because it's like a really intelligent dynamic EQ. As you can see, it affects the whole frequency spectrum, and it's pretty interesting what's going on under the hood. And the settings, I'm still experimenting with this plugin, but it's pretty fun. So what it does, it's very subtle, but what I like about it is that it is subtle and you're not really putting too much heavy weight behind it, but it does help with clarity because there's all these different frequency bands that it's reading and then affecting at the same time. And then I also have for the drums, a little bit of EQ, shelving off a little bit of the low end, a little bit of a dip in the low mids, and a little bit of a bump at around the sub area. And then these drums, being that there's so many, some are really hard hitting and lower, some are a little bit brighter and more aggressive and attacky. So this really needed some compression, and these are the settings that I use for that. So you can see, just to try to keep everything relatively the same, you definitely need some compression when it comes to stuff like this. As you can see, when like that big tom roll comes in, there's a little bit more of a gain reduction going on. So, that kind of stuff is important. If you're trying to make everything not be so jumpy, you definitely want to use compression, especially for stuff like this. And then for everything else, I pretty much treated it the same. I used Gullfoss for just sort of sweetening up the audio a little bit of EQ just to kind of tame some of the frequencies I didn't want, and then also compression just to sort of make everything sit a little bit together. All right, so that about wraps it up for this Soundiron session. If you want to learn more about high school drum corps, make sure to go to soundiron.com. And if you like this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.